Welcome, focused learners, to this explainer of Dr. Silas Reed's genuinely groundbreaking insights. Okay, let's dive into this, because today we are unpacking what Dr. Reed calls the dopamine algorithm. We are moving way past that overly simplistic pop culture idea of just getting dopamine hits. We're going to understand how this incredible internal currency actually dictates literally every ounce of your motivation and even how you perceive time itself.
Take a look at this quote right here. Your brain does not run on rewards, it runs on the fluctuation of expectations. This insight completely shatters a massive illusion. For decades, we've all been sold this idea that dopamine equals pleasure. You get a reward, you feel good, end of story. Well, actually, scratch that. Science is now telling us that is entirely biologically incorrect. Everything we thought we knew about pleasure and rewards is just missing the actual mechanism entirely.
Which brings up a pretty critical question you really need to ask yourself right now. Are you losing money in your internal biological market? Because if you don't grasp how this internal dopamine math operates, you are essentially bleeding capital out there. This specific biological currency dictates whether you're going to charge toward a goal with a sharp, focused urgency, or if you're just going to dissolve into a state of total, flat amotivation. It's time we take back control of that fundamental drive.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly it contrasts that old myth with the new science. We used to think dopamine was simply a reward chemical, right? Like a little biological gift box your brain hands you. But the reality is way more of a complex machinery. Dopamine is really about the fluctuation of expectations and, crucially, the pleasure of pursuit. It acts as a continuous learning signal, literally encoding the exact difference between what you expect to happen and what actually happens. It's the thrill of the chase, you guys, not just crossing the finish line.
Section 1. The math of motivation. The wiggle in your software. Let's get right into the mechanics of it.
To really get this internal market, we need to look at the clinical mechanism running in your brain every single second of the day. Scientifically, it's called the temporal difference reinforcement learning algorithm. Sounds super complex, right? But Dr. Reed has this brilliant weather analogy that makes it so simple. Imagine you make a prediction today that we're going to get 2 inches of rain on Saturday. But tomorrow, you check your weather app and suddenly you have to update that prediction to 10 inches. Instantly, your brain registers a difference in those successive expectations. You get this neurological wiggle in your head, even though literally not a single drop of rain has actually fallen yet. At every microstep of a journey, your brain is just constantly, obsessively calculating the difference between your expectation and reality.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the algorithm works in human relationships and what neuroscientists call our foraging behavior. So imagine you're dating someone brand new. On Thursday, you find out they love the exact same obscure indie band that you do. Boom! Your dopamine spikes up because your expectation of this being a great relationship just skyrocketed. But then, come Saturday, you hear they still live with their ex. Yikes! Immediately, your expectations just plummet. This kind of sawtooth up and down of dopamine is exactly the mechanism that keeps us constantly engaged and constantly foraging around for more information. Which leads us to Section 2, the modern foraging trap. And listen, we need to pick up the pace here because this next part is incredibly urgent.
This beautiful, precise mathematical algorithm we just talked about is actively being weaponized against you every single day. Social media platforms, gambling apps, they have figured this biology out to absolute perfection. They rely on infinite scrolling mechanisms and losses disguised as wins to constantly, relentlessly micro-update your expectations. They just want to give you that tiny little wiggle in your mental software, just enough to keep you playing their game. And why? Because the entire system is built to ensure you never, ever actually feel satisfied. Think about it. If you were fully satisfied, you'd put the phone down, right? You'd stop living in the app, and you would stop scrolling completely.
And this leads right into a massive, totally hidden problem. When we overindulge in this digital brain candy, like binging short-form videos for 3 hours straight, we are artificially raising our tonic dopamine baseline. We're resetting our biological expectations so insanely high that normal, everyday, natural events literally cannot exceed them anymore. So what happens? We become trapped in a state of languishing. We feel flat, unmotivated, completely exhausted. And the crazy part is, we don't even realize it's just a math problem happening in our own heads.
So how do we fix it? Section 3. Managing your 2Bs. Here is Dr. Reed's framework for taking back control.
Inside your head, to take back your hijacked biological currency, you really have to recognize the 2 Bs buzzing around in there. First up, you have the Explorer B. This is your easily distracted lateral thinking mode. It's essentially your ADHD muscle, constantly scanning the environment for any new opportunities. But on the flip side is the exploiter bee, which is highly linear, highly disciplined, and incredibly task-focused. To be effective in life, you must actively balance these two distinct modes of thinking, rather than just letting infinite scroll algorithms force you into a permanent, completely exhausted explore mode.
Moving right along to Section 4, Protocols for Mastery. Okay, let's just slow things right down for a second. We're going to look at the calming, actionable, science-based protocols you can start using today to actually fix your baseline.
We'll start with the factory reset protocol. So the crucial point is that just as physical exercise creates physical lactate in your muscles, you actually need to create the lactate of the mind through deliberate discomfort. Try a 5-minute daily meditation, for example. In the first week of doing this, your anxiety is probably going to go up. But that rising agitation isn't a sign that you're failing. It's actually a chemical signal that your brain is entering a high plasticity edit mode. If you can just sit with that agitation without instantly giving in to the impulse to quit, you are actively training your prefrontal cortex to override those baser dopamine urges. You are literally rewiring your own self-control.
And finally, we have the replenishment protocol. It is absolutely crucial to remember that dopamine is a finite currency. It literally turns on your cell's mitochondria to make ATP energy available for your movement and your thoughts. These algorithmic digital systems are constantly forcing you to react, completely draining that vital cognitive energy. So to refill your dopamine well and actually support your cells at a microscopic level, you have to prioritize states of what Dr. Reed calls wordlessness. Put the phone away. Go for a long hike. Prioritize deep sleep where you aren't consuming a single piece of information. By completely cutting off that data flow, your nervous system can finally erase all that irrelevant digital noise and consolidate the learning that actually matters.
Which brings us to our final slide, and a real, pressing choice you have to make right now. Will you keep scrolling? Or is it time to step into wordlessness? Mastering your internal currency isn't just a self-help gimmick to feel a little bit better. It's about fundamentally reclaiming your drive, your energy, and your time from the algorithms that were literally built to steal it. You now understand the math of your own motivation. The next step? Well, that's entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this Explainer Focused Learners. Now, get out there, step into wordlessness, and master your internal market.